So, walking the sustainability talk, I have with me Vanessa Arnam, who is Director of CSR at Play and Go. Lisbeth, you have already met, but this is Lisbeth Oost. She is the head of ESG in JVH Gaming and Entertainment Group. And Rachel De Cellis, Associate Director and ESG Lead at KPMG Malta. I am horrible at titles, that's why I'm looking at my, I'm like Rachel, Vanessa, and Lisbeth. But, so let's start off with a question on why companies should care about sustainability and ESG. So just give me like one good reason. Why should they care, Vanessa?
For us at Play and Go, it's all about taking responsibility, being transparent, and ultimately every company has an impact on, the people that we employ, the industry that we work in, the customers, and ultimately for us as a supplier, also the players, and equally, how we collaborate with our partners, as well as the impact that we have on the planet. So for us, it's very much about being a good force and committing to a journey of continuous improvement within all of these pillars within ESG.
Good answer. Lisbeth?
I do believe, like taking it a little bit wider, that it's the only viable option to be in it for the long run, because you really look at like long-term perspective, and sustainability items, they will undermine your business in the long term. You could ignore them maybe in the short run, but not in the long term. So like longevity of your business.
I mean, of course, both Vanessa and Lisbeth are correct, but my focus here would be resilience. So making sure that your company is there into the future. We're seeing so many climate impacts already, pressure from stakeholders, customers, investors, regulators. It is not something that you can survive into the future if you don't care about sustainability.
Very true. Vanessa, you said that it is about being a force for good. And as a supplier, as a reminder to everybody, so Play and Go is a slots, online slots provider. Do you feel that the supplier side and your peers have a focus on ESG, or how does it look?
Definitely for us, as a supplier, we also have a duty of care towards the players. And we have a long-standing commitment that goes back several years. So we've also said that there's certain type of games that we have decided against producing. And we're very much entertainment focused. And that's, for us, that's where the future of this industry is and where it needs to be as well. So we're proud to be at the forefront, even though, in the short term, our commitment to safer gambling and not producing a certain type of games is also sort of means that we leave money on the table in the short run. But like Lisbeth said as well, it's very much connected to the long-term survival and thriving of our industry. And we absolutely have something that we need to be responsible for there.
That's really interesting that you actually made the sort of the business decision to not produce certain games. Was that a difficult decision for you?
That's something that our CEO has communicated several years ago, and certainly I know that we get asked, why don't we produce these games, or getting external pressure from some parties that we work with, and I think all of the teams that are in those conversations are continuing to show very strong commitment in this sense. And I think that goes to show that this commitment is also very much part of our culture. And I'm really, really happy and proud of our teams for continuing to down that road, basically.
I think the whole sort of value chain discussion is very interesting because, at the end of the day, Betsson is an online operator. We do certain things within our realm, so to speak, but there is the supplier side which really needs to come into play, especially when it comes to responsible gaming. But actually, we'll get back to other topics as well. Remind me so I don't forget to talk to you about climate. But Lisbeth, first, when we talk about the whole value chain, your company actually is both online and offline, like physical casinos as well. Tell us about that. How does that work?
So GVH, they have 87 venues, like land-based casinos, throughout the whole of the Netherlands. And yeah, it does pose different topics that we need to look up. With the materiality assessment, which I compare from previous companies that I worked at are mostly digital, we have a more of an environmental impact having like a venue. And there's also some very jurisdictional topics. Like an example that I can give, like in the Netherlands, the municipalities can choose, because everybody has their own target to bring their CO2 down, to make like zero emission zones. They can appoint like a certain zone within their city center. And this will start from 2025. And these 87 casinos, they're mostly like in city centers. And this would mean that buses that service the centers, like they need to go daily to check the machines and everything. Or even suppliers, there's like food, there's like drinks and foods everywhere. So we need people to supply the casinos. So there you need to think ahead, like how are we going to do that? Because we need to maybe change like a whole series of small buses or cars to electricity to be able to get there. So this is something very jurisdictional, right? I think the CSRD, it gives a minimum standard that then each jurisdiction needs to put into their national law. But otherwise, I think the essence of the product, when it comes to responsible gaming, the data protection, like the main topics, they are relatively in the same area.
If it's online or offline, it's the same considerations. Yeah. Okay. Rachel, on that note, I mean, we talked about why it's a good idea to focus on sustainability. But in your experience, then, as a consultant for the KPMG, what would you say are the biggest challenges for companies today?
I think just the complexity. First of all, I want to start off with something. So often, people, when they hear about ESG, they're a little bit afraid, so we get that a lot. But then once you explain what ESG is, it's actually not rocket science. There's a lot that people are doing already that falls under the umbrella on ESG, and maybe then it's about going to the next level. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. But it does tend to get then a little bit complex. So with the CSRD, for example, just reading through the materials and the standards that have been produced, and 1,200 data points that we see. So there are challenges there. You need to find time. You need to have resources. You might need to invest in people or in technology. But it might also be a good idea to network with your peers, to try to get the information that you need, or get a trusted partner to help you along the way. So there are challenges, but there are also ways around these challenges. So and we're finding companies like Betsson and others and yourselves that are finding a way around these challenges, and perhaps also turning them into opportunities as well.
No, I think you're making a few good points. So that's what those of you who saw my presentation earlier today with the cake, my point was that there is already a lot going on in many companies. You already have a lot of ESG practices in place, but you may not have labeled them as ESG because they are just a normal part of your operations. And especially in a heavily regulated industry such as ours, we already have to follow a lot of regulatory restrictions and compliance processes and God knows what. And all of that, at the end of the day, is part of good governance. Mm-hmm. So, no, definitely, I agree. And also that we are on this journey together. So, I mean, do reach out. I keep saying that, but do reach out and find those people out there who you can brainstorm with. I think that has been a very good part of this journey. But I just wanted to get back to the whole climate side before I forget about that, because both you, Lisbeth, and Vanessa, I know you should talk about it at least. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Play and Go and how you have approached the climate part of ESG?
Sure. So we've actually released our first sustainability report this week. And the approach that we've taken on the climate side has been very much an innovations-based approach. Last year we committed to become members of the Climate Pledge, and that commitment basically includes to measure scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, to innovate and change and thereby reduce the emissions, and then obviously also report on the emissions. And we've not set any sort of specific measurement targets, but rather we've set some high-level goals to be carbon neutral by 2025 and net zero by 2030. And then we've provided a sustainability framework for our teams, and provided them with free innovation space to contribute in a way that also connects with their business goals. Because certainly for myself working in this space, I have very little detailed knowledge about all of the amazing things that are happening outside in the organization. And so by doing this, this gives freedom and flexibility, and I try to work with more on sort of positive reinforcement and raising the profile of great initiatives when we see some. We obviously also have we have some systems as well to support us. We work with Position Green, for instance. We've automated some of the how we work with our travel emissions, so that's already compensated at source, which is really helpful. But certainly also contribute to decarbonization projects, tree planting initiatives, and waste reduction from global oceans and rivers as well. So we have a global sort of portfolio, which connects a little bit to what we were talking about before with corporate giving as well. And certainly this is not necessarily the only approach or the one that will be suitable for all companies, but it's one approach, and we found that this has been working quite well for us. So, yeah.
Would you like to comment on the climate side as well, Lisbeth?
I think maybe some examples that we're doing is that we've invested in solar energy for the land-based, so to say, and also what we're just talking about the electric vehicles. So we changed this year all our service vehicles to EV, just already in preparation for that. And then the company will be for CSRD in scope in 2025. So this is where we are preparing now the full footprint assessment, the calculations, the setting the targets to reduce, coming out with our own pledge. I think this is like a journey that companies who are starting going through. First, we want to know where are we, how much are the emissions, so then you can set a strategy to reduce yourself, and then you follow the steps. In the end, you can also use offsetting by donating to projects down the line. So yeah.
No, I think, for Betsson, it was pretty clear that even though we don't have a massive amount of emission, because we are an online company, we did set science-based targets for how much we're going to reduce our emissions 4 years ago now. And then we did a climate roadmap for how to actually deliver on that. And while we still have emissions, because we do, then we climate compensate for those by investing in, mainly in wind and in solar to sort of put clean and green energy back into the grid. And I think Betsson is probably one of few companies that climate compensate for the electricity that our customers use, so scope 3. So when our customers play on our brands, we calculate how much emissions that cause, and then we climate compensate for that. But Rachel, you're the climate expert, actually. Would you like to comment on how companies could approach this tricky subject of the climate side?
Yeah, and I often hear within the gaming world, but what do I have to do with climate? We don't release any emissions, we don't manufacture, we don't have a power station, but actually you do indirectly from your electricity consumption, from your own buildings, but also from the demand that you generate for electricity that it's potentially powered by fossil fuels through data centers, through the electricity that your customers use. So this is a very relevant topic even in the online gaming space. And as with everything, you can only act on what you measure, right? So that's the first thing. As Lisbeth mentioned, you account for your carbon footprint, your scope 1, which is your own direct emissions. These are typically quite low. Your scope 2, which is then your emissions from electricity consumption, and then your scope 3, which is your value chain emissions, which as we were discussing earlier this week, can be quite interesting to get data from your suppliers as well. And then once you've identified where the biggest impacts are, you can decide on what actions to take. We've done that assessment ourselves, even for KPMG, and have a little bit of a roadmap. Our main emissions, much like yourselves, would be in the scope 2 and scope 3. So I think really that's it. It's about identifying where your main emissions lie, and then once you've done that, looking at what options you have to reduce them and bring them as close to zero as possible.
And I mean, we heard earlier today, I'm looking at you, Lisbeth, because we just talked to the MGA about their ESG Code of Good Practice, where there actually will be a measurement even for climate. So I mean, I think it is something that we need to take into account. And the investors that I meet, at least, Betsson is a listed company, they always ask about what we do for the climate, as do the employees. So there are definitely stakeholders out there who are interested in that area. But Lisbeth, I wanted to ask you more about the, we heard you talk to Anna at MGA about the ESG Code of Good Practice, and I mean there are quite a few of these voluntary or regulatory, we've talked about CSRD, so the EU directive, coming up. What's your take on sort of
or audits can be very useful if it can direct you into a more of an industry standard, because I can see that EU regulation wants us to go there, so the whole industry can like focus more powerful on the same topics to address it. But I think for now what we also see is a bit of disconnect to when we do the double materiality analysis, including the stakeholder analysis, the investors, yes, they find responsible gaming very important. But then when you fill in surveys from large banks, 50-60% is about environment, 40% is social and government. And there is no specific entry for responsible gaming because these are all standards. It's like a one-size-fits-all. So that's the space where we find ourselves a bit. It doesn't really match like often how we analyze ourselves, but I hope, like indeed, like finding sound sport, getting more groups together. I think what the MGA does is very useful for us. That would really help us more in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, with all that's happening now within this sphere, what? This is a question to all of you. What are your like top 3 tips for someone or a company that would like to get started and get going with their ESG journey? Vanessa?
I mean, for us, it was very much connected to our values, and from there, building up a strategy with 4 pillars that we felt, okay, these are the ones that we care about the most, that make the most sense for our business, and where we, as a company, can have the biggest positive impact as well. And so I think that's a good starting point, like looking at your values and what's really important for your business. From there, kind of build up a framework. Certainly, there's many areas within the different pillars as well. So it's also where do you start, which pillar within ESG, so to speak. But I think one of the great things is that as a regulated industry, we already have a ton of really good things, and especially maybe on the governance side. So it's, start to look at some of the things that you have. Look at the frameworks for inspiration, even though you might not start with reporting immediately, but from there you can also, gain some insights and get some inspiration for where to start.
And you, Lisbeth, I know you've changed jobs a few times. So
Yeah.
you have started in quite a few companies.
Setting everything up.
Setting
that's
it up.
My,
Yeah, this is the setting up expert. Yes.
Yeah, and in the process of setting that up, I think right at the start, it's so important that you look at your ESG governance. Like, how are the lines? Who is involved in decision making? Get management on board, creating like an ESG committee and get together as the responsible person. Since that's the topic of ESG sits everywhere. It's very interdisciplinary. So you need the right people to check with on a regular basis. And you still need to have enough decision-making power not to like be somewhere like in the middle every time. So it's definitely working close with the CFO on the numbers, working with the CEO on the strategy, and then on your different departments for your material topics. And then you can dive deeper into that materiality analysis because each of these departments have their own expert. Like, I'm not an expert on RG. I learned a lot and I know a lot about it, but I still need to talk to my RG team and our RG managers who need to give me the input, how we can improve, how can we do better interactions, how can we put numbers on interaction and RG and then have that in the report. So all of that is very useful. Start with mapping your internal organization and then come up with a long list of topics that you will make smaller, fit in the ESRS. Like there's of the ESG framework that the EU is now as that comes into force, there's 10 topics they want to report. 5 are under environment, 4 under social, and 1 under governance. And the one under social that's focused on consumers and end users, that's going to be probably really big for our industry because it's how can we offer responsible products, how can it be responsibly consumed? So yeah, it's like seeing where those things fit and then putting the KPIs on it with your teams, and then you can start more like on the reporting process. And once we get like where we can analyze from year to year and maybe add a few more disclosures and KPIs every year, that's a really good point.
But who do you report to?
To the CFO.
FO. And Vanessa?
CMO.
CMO. And I report to the Vice President Investor Relations. So I think you will find, if there is a person, you can find that person a little bit everywhere in the organization. But exactly like you're saying, it's part of all the teams and all the tasks anyway. I mean, what do I know about servers and IT infrastructure? And yet that is one of our biggest emission sources, for example. And responsible gaming, definitely. We had a session on that earlier today, and it's a huge topic, basically. Rachel, what about you? What are your sort of top 3 tips?
Top 3 tips. So the first thing is foundational, is don't let good be the opposite of perfect. So when you start out, and I've been doing sustainability for nearly 20 years now, and it can be very discouraging, like, how do I get there? But don't try to get there from day one, get here. And how do you do that? So first of all, the double materiality assessment or a materiality assessment is going to be really important to whittle down the topics from your long list into something that is a little bit more manageable. That's the first thing. The second thing is engage with your stakeholders. So make sure that you are focusing on the topics that your stakeholders find to be important. And this includes your internal stakeholders, as we are saying, because you need to get that buy-in from your CFO, your CEO, your COO, your CMO, whoever. So that's really important. And it will help you then go up the ladder to the standard that you want to reach. And the third thing is communicate. So tell people what you are doing. Don't greenwash, don't overstate your ambitions and your achievements, but don't green hush either. Don't sort of hide everything under the bushel and fearing that maybe you're not doing it well enough or don't be afraid of that. Just be vocal about what you are doing to your external stakeholders, but also internally to your employees. Make them aware and make them engaged in the process and the outcome.
Well, for me, I come from the corporate communication side, so I'm completely with you there on the communication and the importance of communication. But Vanessa, I saw you nodding when Rachel was talking about the top, best, absolute, perfect. Yeah, you want to comment on that?
Yes, and I totally agree. Just to really emphasize your point there is take taking one step is, infinitely more than taking 0 steps. So wherever you start, and it doesn't need to be a leap, but just take one step and from there evaluate, okay, then what is the next step? So that's definitely something that I agree on and support.
It really is a journey, absolutely. So, I mean, we've had a full day of ESG topics here today. The first ever, I might add, at Next, the first ESG track. Very proud of that. But that's not what I was going to say. I was so happy about it. But what I was going to say is, you've been here all day. What do you take with you from this day? Rachel, why don't you start?
I will start with something that you said. In fact, I was making notes all day, very millennial of me. It was something that you said initially, Jonna, where you said climate is now a hygiene factor. It's not something anymore that ESG is not something anymore that you may or may not do. You do if you want to. Employees are asking about it. Banks are asking about it. Investors are asking about it. Your suppliers are asking about it. So this is not something that you can ignore. And I think that really struck with me. And we saw a similar thread running through a lot of the presentations and discussions that we saw today.
Lisbeth?
I think I want to take away that today there's been a lot of interest. Most of the sessions we had like full room, and that's really good to see that people are more interested to learn and there's getting more awareness. So I want to reverse that question a bit, like what I learned. But I think that's really good, and we need to keep on learning, and we need to create more networks to learn from each other. We shouldn't all figure this out by ourselves because it's so unclear. So I'm very happy, that at least us here and with a bit of a wider group, we often get together and share knowledge and information to, all like climb towards, more impact.
No, I mean, I definitely see ESG and sustainability as something where we, as an industry, should raise the bar. It's not really that much about competing. It's more about a joint effort, because that is going to benefit us all in the end. Vanessa, anything that you took away from today?
Quite similar to Lisbeth as well, and also that I perceive also a shift to creating value for all stakeholders to the business, and focusing more on quality. And I think, unfortunately, this area of where we're working with ESG and all of the acronyms are not as exciting sounding. But, if we just move past those acronyms, it's more about innovation and change and the long-term sustainability of our industry. And certainly that should be at the highest level of everyone's agenda, I think.
And we're good at that. I mean, come on, that's what iGaming does, right? We innovate, we come up with new ways of doing things. We do create value for our for our stakeholders. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't be here. So no, I definitely agree with that. So one last question to all of you: why do you work with ESG? Why have you chosen this path in life, Lisbeth?
Well, before I joined gaming, I was working in the public sector in foreign affairs, and people always ask me, like, but why? This is such a big change, right? Like, black and white. But no, I feel very at home somewhere where I can make an impact and to drive and to convince people within the organization. And then actually after, we do it that, this is the right way. And now that regulation is actually giving us a little bit of a push or like the wind blowing our direction, it's really good. And I really like to be on the forefront of this space and like look back maybe in 10, 20 years or whenever we retire, say like, okay, we were there and we made like this industry a little bit better.
We were there when it happened. We helped make it happen. I like that, yeah. Rachel?
So for those of you who know me, I'm a chemist by training, and I think I didn't fancy a career in the lab, although chemistry is a very noble profession. And I think much like Lisbeth, I wanted to do work that matters. And for me, sustainability is a very practical way to use my skills. It's something that makes a difference. It's a topic that really matters. It's, you know, very topical at the moment and will affect future generations. It's interesting, you know, you get to meet wonderful people, and it's, you know, the right sort of challenging. So I feel really at home in this subject, I would say.
Vanessa.
So Playing Go has been around for about 20 years, and that's pretty much the same amount of years that since I started in this industry as well.
You're the veteran.
And I, which sounds really strange because I don't feel like it, but we've come such a long time, or such a long way in this time, and just the fact that we have this whole track for a whole day here speaks volumes about our progress so far. And I would also like to, you know, think about the next 20 years and what does it look like when I look back at how did I contribute and what did we do at company level to contribute to a sustainable industry, and what kind of, you know, how do I want to feel about looking back at those the next 20 years, so to speak. That gives me just a really great sense of purpose in my sort of role, but obviously I also like to have sort of fun in my daily work life. I get to work with colleagues from all across the organization. There's definitely a ton of innovation. There's creative problem solving. There's always something new happening, and this is very much at the forefront now. I think that's where I'm also thriving and get to be involved both at sort of strategic level as well as quite operational in my roles that I have. So that's what I think that's my why.
Yeah, for me, I think I don't do easy. I come from industries that are, you know, defense, been with the government, the European Parliament. I don't do easy. This is not easy, but I do like to meddle and get involved and be all over the organization. That's something that I really enjoy, and also it irritates me a little bit that gaming is viewed in a sort of unfavorable light, because it's a form of entertainment that has been around since, you know, thousands and thousands of years ago, and there's so much good that's going on, and I really want to be part of pushing that really and showcasing some of the work that is actually done within the industry when it comes to processes. We heard, I think it was at the investor and the CFO panel who talked about that banks are actually impressed by our due diligence and by our KYC and onboarding process. Well, we don't hear a lot about that. So I think ESG is a good opportunity for the industry to showcase the work that is being done. Okay, do we have any questions from the audience? So these are the experts. Take the opportunity to ask them if you have any questions.
Don't be shy.
Everything was crystal clear. Well, we're always here. You know, again, this is a joint effort. Do reach out to us, and we would be, I'm speaking for everybody now, but we would be happy to brainstorm, happy to discuss, yeah.
Yes, I think you can speak on behalf of, like, connect, ask questions, link up, have a drink, like, yes.
It's a journey. We're on it together. All
Good.
right. Well, I mean, that concludes our ESG track. The first, I might add, if you didn't hear me say that earlier, the first ESG track at at Next Valletta. Thank you for being with us today, and well, I hope to see you next year.